Okay, so welcome everyone to Thursday meditation. Let's start by sitting up comfortably. I bet you knew I was going to say that. And see how the body feels. Maybe loosen up the body a little bit. And let's start our session today by breathing through our feet. Haven't done this one in a while. So, as you're breathing in, just naturally, normally breathing in, just imagine you're breathing in through the soles of your feet. As you breathe out, imagine breathing out through the soles of the feet. And just continue to do that at your own tempo. Breathing in through the soles of the feet, breathing out through the soles of the feet. And you might find that you feel like breathing a little deeper and a little slower than usual. It's up to you. You may find that it really feels good to fill your lungs and separate your ribs. And then as you breathe out, to really empty out and pull the ribs together, squeeze out the air as it goes in and out through the soles of your feet. And you may want to add that little rasping sound in the back of your throat, the Darth Vader sound, which stimulates the vagus nerve and helps settle things down. So after you complete your next out breath, just let go of that whole breathing through the feet business and just breathe normally. Leave the breath to take care of itself. And leave everything to take care of itself. The hearing, feeling, thinking, experiencing sensations and emotions, whatever's there. It all takes care of itself very beautifully. So we're on vacation. Nothing for us to do but kick back. Kick back and be. Kick back and be this space right here, this openness, this experiencing openness that we call awareness, this conscious, silent space where all experience takes place. We don't create it. We can't get rid of it. It's been there every moment of our life. All we can do is ignore it or notice it. And if we notice it, we have the option to relax back into it. Just relaxing back into this sky-like, space-like openness that we call awareness. Within which all the other experiences come and go, but they take care of themselves. Nothing to accomplish, nowhere to get, no way to accomplish it, no map to get anywhere, no method, no technique, no strategy, no anything. Just this awareness, this beingness, this wide open, luminous emptiness, which is always already here. It's always here a priori, before everything else. We notice it, we relax back into it. That's simple. Anything we're gripping, any thought or feeling or plan or anything, just relax your grip. That's all. Relax your grip, relax back into this boundless, open, luminous, aware space. Right here. Never have to look for it. Now, this might be around the time when your little internal clock starts telling you, we're getting along here in the meditation. Perhaps a few more minutes will be getting the signal to end. And subtly, that sense may start kicking up some quiet thoughts like, okay, I wonder if the discussion will be interesting. Should I ask my question? Whatever. Maybe not. Maybe, yeah, what about after this? What are we having for dinner? Whatever. And all is fine, of course. Whatever thoughts, whatever feelings come and go is always none of our business in meditation. But notice, please, that all those thoughts about what am I going to do afterward, they're all based on the premise that there will be an afterward, that there will be a point where someone rings a bell and then we open our eyes, we come out. We've been marinating here in the beingness for a while, and then we're going to come out and go back to the world of time and space and multiplicity, back to our lives. But what if we don't? What if we throw away that assumption? Do we really know that there's a point where we'll open our eyes again and return to our lives? We don't know for sure. So we've been making that one assumption. Let's make the other assumption, just for a change. Let's assume that we just remain here, sinking deeper and deeper into the boundless beingness, the vast, luminous, delicious open space of pure awareness. We don't leave a rope ladder to climb back out of the well, so to speak. We cut the rope ladder. We buy a one-way ticket. We feel whatever's the subtle impulses, the subtle energies in the body and mind that are associated with, okay, keeping the idea of coming out. We just cut that all. We feel where they are. It's a subtle, delicate thing, and just cut it all. This is it. One-way ticket. Just sinking deeper and deeper into beingness, melting, dissolving completely into beingness. With no idea of coming back out of it ever again. And take a few minutes to ease the body out before opening your eyes. Okay, how's everybody doing? Oh, let me give you the power to unmute. There you go. Okay, how are people doing? Good? Good? Good. Any questions or comments on meditation stuff? Yes, please, Joanne.
Thank you, Dean. I have a lot of gripping, layers of gripping. And so all throughout, let me just say that I feel like I had a wonderful experience with the meditation. But every time, I noticed the gripping and letting go, there's always layers underneath. And I just find that discouraging. So that there's never a point at which I'm not gripping, because there's always a gripping underneath the gripping that I'm letting, that I'm letting go, releasing,
Right, right. So never a place of completely, let's not say never, let's say not yet.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. That's why we call this practice. That's why we call this practice. Dharma practice. It's not practice. I have mixed feelings about that word, because we have two main ways that we use it in English. There's probably other ways, but two I'm thinking of. One is practicing is like getting ready for the real thing, like rehearsing, right? And it's, of course, we're not practicing in that sense. This is the real thing. It's always the real thing. But the other sense of practice is we keep doing it over and over, day after day after day. And, it's interesting that the uh, the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, right? You familiar with that? The right first noble truth. Oh man, there's suffering in our lives. That
Actually,
sucks,
thank you.
right?
Actually, I'm not familiar. So,
Okay, good. So I'm giving you the quick intro, and it's always good for us to reintroduce ourselves to the Four Noble Truths. This is the cornerstone of the Buddha's teaching for his entire career. 45 years, basically, he kept saying this over and over. And here we are 2,500 years later still saying it. So he got, that's the thing people have discovered with all this online stuff and books and book publishing. People love lists. They love the 7 habits of highly effective people, the 10 whatever, right? 10 commandments. They've gotten a lot of mileage. So the Four Noble Truths. What's the first noble truth? Suffering happens in our lives, right? And in a way we'd say, do we really need someone to tell us that? But in a way, yeah, we do. We need to. That's the point of entry. If we're going to get real about improving our lives, we have to first look at the situation. We need the diagnosis. Oh, suffering's taking place, and it's not just us; it's everyone. And the Buddha goes, into depth about all the different kinds of suffering. They catalog it. It's the word that the Buddha used is dukkha, dukkha, which actually a better translation for it is discomfort, or feeling something's off, like a pebble in your shoe. Because otherwise some people say, hey, I'm doing fine. I'm well fed. I've got a good job, or I don't have to work anymore. I'm not suffering. The Buddha came from some third world country where, they don't have good dental care. And of course they were suffering. But as we know, you can have all the money you need, have all the health care, blah, blah, blah. And there's still a feeling of, something's wrong, something's missing, something's, right? So dukkha, that off feeling, that discomfort. And it can go all the way up to what the Buddha called dukkha dukkha, which is the suffering, serious suffering, pain, suffering. Okay, that's the first noble truth. So first we acknowledge that. Second noble truth is the source of suffering. Now, we think we know the source of suffering. That might seem obvious, right? Okay, I'm suffering because, or I'm feeling discomfort or offness because I didn't get I didn't get the letter I was waiting for. I'm feeling it because I got an upsetting text from my friend or my partner, whatever. My team lost the playoffs. There's always all this stuff, external stuff, which it seems obvious to us is the source of suffering. But this is where the Buddha's teaching was revolutionary, totally radical. He said, no, the suffering is not caused by the external stuff. It's caused by the internal way we handle it, by the way we process it, skillfully or not skillfully. And what most people do is there's the experience they're having, and then there's the experience they feel that they should be having, and they're like grinding those things together. They're grinding their gears, right? Like, for instance, let's say I say to you, I pledge allegiance to the... Okay, feeling a little uneasy, right? When's the guy going to drop the other freaking shoe? When's he going to say flag? Right? So there's the expectation and there's the reality, right? And it's that simple. It doesn't even have to be, oh, I wanted a Rolls Royce and I got a Volkswagen instead. It's that simple. I was just reading a piece in the New York Times from a few years ago about, when you're texting with people and you get the ... that means they're typing, but they haven't finished yet. They haven't hit send yet. And this whole article about the anxiety that people experience when they see that ... waiting for, like, come on. Now that is a perfect example, because it's so silly and dumb, of how we generate suffering. We're pushing for something, we're pressing for the present moment to be something other than what it is. And the present moment is never other than what it is. Now, what happens in meditation is, and this is where the third noble truth comes in. The third noble truth is the truth of the end of suffering, the cessation of suffering. Right? See, the second noble truth is really good news. It's really good news. The fact that we create our own suffering is fantastic, because if our suffering was coming from the external environment, we'd all be completely screwed, because the environment is bigger than us. We can't control the environment. We can do something about how we process it. Right? And so how we process it skillfully, that's the third noble truth, which is to let go of what the Buddha called Tanha. Tanha, T-A-N-H-A. Tanha literally means thirst. This, you know what it's like when you're really thirsty? No matter what else, you could be watching the best movie in the world, you could be watching the beautiful sunset, when you're really thirsty, it's just, I gotta have that, and that colors everything. Right? That getting caught up in, I need for things to change. So what the third noble truth tells us is to let go of Tanha. And how do we do that? Where do we learn to do? We learn to do that in meditation. Exactly, Joanne, what you were saying. You feel yourself gripping, and okay, let me let go of this gripping. And there's some settling back. Now maybe then there's another level of gripping. Okay, you let go of that, you settle back. And this finding ourselves, I remember one time in my New Jersey days, I'd been teaching classes all day at the Pingree School where I used to teach, and then I was going to be doing something in the evening in the city, so it was going to be a long, active day in the evening, and now I'm on the New Jersey Transit train. I sit down and go, now I can just kick back and meditate, get ready for my evening. The next stop, 2 teenage girls get on the train, and they get in the seat right behind me. And they're talking loud. They're on their phones. They're talking. And I'm sitting there just fume. And now there was no other seat I can move to. Oh, they're messed up my whole day. How can I meditate? And I did that for a little while. And then suddenly I saw what I was doing. I went, this is what the Buddha's talking about. Here's me creating my own suffering. Let me just kick back, girls talking, train going, sensations in the butt, whatever, let it come and go as it comes and goes. So you see how valuable that is. You see what a blessing it was for me, for those girls to show up. Those were my those were my gurus for the moment. Right? And so we keep doing that again and again, day after day in meditation. And then we're learning, we're the nervous system really is learning how, because the nervous system has had plenty of practice gripping onto stuff, right? Creating suffering by grasping. I mean, that's the short way of saying it. It's the gripping, the grasping creates the suffering. It's had plenty of practice doing that. It's had less practice doing this. So, there's an old saying, it's hard to get rid of an old habit. It's much easier to replace it with a new habit. So our new habit is to do this instead of this, right? So we practice that in meditation, and then more and more we start finding, well, there's not that much difference between having our eyes closed and our eyes open. We find ourselves in activity doing that. Why is this person saying this thing when I'm going to... Now, you need to engage that person. You need to tell them, no, listen, we really need to... But it turns out we don't need this in order to be effective. In fact, this makes us less effective. If we're coming... You notice when people are coming to you from a place like this, you're less receptive to what they say. When they're coming to you from here, you're more receptive. You feel the quality of openness, the lack of friction, needless friction and where they're coming from. So there's the first three noble truths. Now, seems like that's all there should be, right? We're suffering. Oh, here's where it comes from. Then we get rid of it, dusted and done. We're all set. Why is there a fourth noble truth? Okay. The fourth noble truth is, well, you got to practice. And it seems like they're out of order. Doesn't it seem like, okay, there's suffering. Here's the origin. Then we practice for a while, and then there's the cessation of suffering. They're out of order. Now, I have a little theory about how this happened, which I'm sure it's probably wrong, but it's just something that occurred to me once a few years back, which is we know that the Buddha and his disciples traveled from village to village in the area where they lived in northern India for 45 years. They set up camp at the edge of a town or a village where they wouldn't get caught up in the day-to-day, they'd be at the edge of the woods there, but yet the townspeople could come. They could beg food from the townspeople and in exchange give them teachings. And they would kind of make their circuit each year. And so my cockamamie theory is that the Buddha originally only taught three noble truths. He'd show, okay, here's suffering. Here's how you're creating suffering with your gripping. Here, let go of that gripping. So simple. And people went, just me talking about this, I can see, people in your little Hollywood squares there. Right? Now imagine the Buddha, probably a tad more charismatic and, in his personality and delivery than, Chaim Yankel here. And so I would imagine he would present the three noble truths. Everyone would go, and so, okay, great. We're all done. These guys are cooked. I'll move on to the next village. But then he would come around a year later. And guess what? They've slipped back into their old habit of suffering. So, in my theory, he went, okay, gee, I had this nice simple three, three's a nice magic number, but it was so simple. Okay, I'll add a fourth truth. You got to practice because there's a tendency to fall back into the habit. And also because neurologically, he would not have used that word probably, but we can say neurologically, we're so accustomed to doing this thing that it takes some time to replace it with the habit of doing this thing. So fourth noble truth is practice. And
thank you.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful scheme of things, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. This is the thing we keep coming back to, and it's just it always, I'm not saying that the Buddhist teaching the Four Noble Truths is the only model for looking at it, but it's a very powerful model.
Perfect. Yeah.
It is perfect. Yeah, it is. So the bottom line to your question is hang in there. Just keep showing up. Keep sitting down, closing your eyes. And guess what? You're not the first person to tread this path. You're not the first person to go, God, every layer of gripping that I let go of, there's another layer beneath it. Everyone's gone through that. The Buddha went through that. What's the difference between an enlightened Buddha and just some, regular schlump like ourselves? They stayed with it. They just stayed with it.
Dean, you are so brilliant to explain things such a easy way to very simple and easy way and very practical.
Good.
Amazing how you explain things.
Good. Thank you. I've been working on it, and I had the great advantage of doing this for 33 years with high school students, and doing it with prisoners who, some of them don't have a lot of education, and say, okay, how do we make things clear? How do we make things simple? I love clarity. I don't have a lot of patience when a teacher of anything, or when a customer service rep or anyone is not clear. Like, come on, you do this. This is all you do 5 days a week. Be clear. Come on. All right. So, yes, thank you, Susie.
So, Dean, I just wanted to, as you were talking, to me, the experience of how that happens, the suffering part of it, and how it's some event that occurs that then you react to, or thoughts come up about. Like today, I had something like that happen, and how automatic it seems to be, and how quickly it can happen, almost like a habitual. It just pops right in. And sometimes nothing can be happening, but just the anticipation of something happening. Like, I was heading towards a particular intersection that I knew was going to be difficult, because it's difficult to pull into traffic. And I'm not even there yet. And yet I've already created this problem, and I'm looking at the cars as they're coming, and I'm saying, oh, look, there's 3 cars. I'm going to be stuck there for, 10 minutes. Right. And all of a sudden the 3 cars go and there's no way, but so it's just sort of like how automatic this is. And how much emotion can come up, and how everything can happen. And it happens over and over and over again. So I'm just pointing to like this habit that just keeps recurring over and over and over and over again.
Yes, it's life in the human realm.
Yes. So I just wanted to put that in there.
No. And it's such a good point. It's like we're borrowing trouble from the future. Right? And all the sages talk about it. Jesus speaks, as usual, Jesus speaks very poetically about these things. Take no thought for the morrow. The morrow shall take care of itself. And and there's a line in Shakespeare. I think we talked about this in Sunday poetry for some reason. I think it's from Julius Caesar. The coward dies 1,000 deaths. The hero dies but once. Right? Meaning, of course, that the coward in this case is the unenlightened person, right? And where does he die 1,000 deaths? In his imagination. Like in your case, you had in your imagination, you had to suffer from that traffic situation, which when you got to it, in reality, didn't even exist. Right? But we put ourselves through this stuff. We keep borrowing trouble from the anticipated future. And then also we borrow trouble, we borrow our suffering from the recollected past. Right? How many people do you know that are still fighting with their parents, and their parents are dead? Right? But they're still internally fighting. They're still rehashing. Right? Now, this doesn't mean that when that thought comes up and that feeling comes up to repress it or go, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so unenlightened, I'm so lame, blah, blah, blah. But to recognize it. Oh, yeah, there's that. Right? Recognition is the key. And just that simple thing. Oh, that's that. That's what I'm doing. I mean, that's why we have these discussions. Right? Otherwise, we would just meditate. Right? I mean, just you spend the whole hour and a half marinating in boundlessness. There's something to be said for that. But also there's something to be said for recognizing, right? And this is why we have, again, in Buddhist terms, shamatha and vipassana. We have the settling down and we have the insight. We have settling and seeing. And seeing is also important. Seeing what you're doing, seeing how you create suffering for yourself. And then, it's the old joke. Doctor, it hurts when I do like this. Don't do like that. Right? But you have to recognize that you're doing like this. And then you can just stop. You can but again, coming back to what Joanne was saying, because it's such a habit, 5 minutes later we find ourselves doing it again. Okay, drop it again. 10 minutes later we drop it again. And sometimes it can seem discouraging, as you were saying. God, how long have I been doing this thing with the traffic? But every time you drop it, again, not repress it, not try to push it down, not beat yourself up over being so unenlightened, but just recognize what you're doing and recognize and feeling the physicality of it, right? Feeling the visceral quality of that when you're that, and realizing, oh, I can choose. I have free will here. I can choose to stay caught up in this, or I can, and the breath often is a good cue. Breathe out. Let it go, let it be. Every time you do that, you're weakening the old habit. Again and again. Practice, practice, practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Same deal.
I
Good.
had a doctor once.
Yes.
I had terrible, terrible headaches, and they've been going on since I was a young child. Mm-hmm. My mother would send me to school with aspirin until the nuns found out I was taking aspirin, and they almost had a heart attack. But anyway, and doctors would give me all kinds of pills to take for my headaches. One time I was transferred, and so I was getting a new doctor, and I checked him out. And this one doctor had this fantastic, enormous tree in his front yard. He worked from his, and I thought, I'll go to him because they had honeybees in the tree. And I thought, this is a good sign, I think. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, what do you do when you have one of these headaches? And I said, I just don't want to do anything. I'd like it dark and quiet and in bed. He said, why don't you try doing that before it gets so bad? And gave me permission to recognize that, as a matter of fact, possibly I was creating the headache by my thoughts and by my lack of rest and everything. And it put a whole new spin on health for me.
Right.
He couldn't stand all the insurance work he had to do, and so he quit and went to just doing operations, which broke my heart because he was, anyway, for whatever good it is for others.
Yeah. And then that kind of thing, like for some people, the manifestation is insomnia. And that's a good example because of the sort of vicious cyclic nature of it. I've got a lot to do tomorrow. I'm here. I am lying awake, and I know that this is really going to be bad. I'm going to be just wiped out tomorrow, and then that makes you worry, and then the worrying keeps you up, and then the being up makes you worry, and the worrying, right? And
negative programming.
Yeah, and that self, feeding negative, like the snake swallowing its tail, and you just have to take the whole thing and go, okay, whatever, or bring in some second element. Okay, while I'm lying here, let me breathe through my feet, or let me breathe through the pericardium spots in the middle of the hand. Or let me rest my attention in the space in front of me is a very good one for going to sleep. And just introduce some other element instead of going round and round. Good. What else?
Dean, I had a similar experience in that when you gave permission to let go of the anticipation of the bell.
Yes.
You sort of allowed that this meditation might not end, right where we thought it would. And I had been having, really throughout the entire time, I hadn't been able to settle at all. And that's not normal for me. But I don't know, I've been doing a lot of manual labor in the hot, sweaty, humid outside. But it was as soon as you said, forget that this is coming to an end, I completely
dropped in.
It was very
yeah. other people feel that there was some, yeah, that's a very powerful thing, I find. I've been using that more and more in my own practice and in my teaching. And really it is just another recognition of reality.
Right.
We never know that we're going to come out. We know right now we probably are going on our lazy habitual assumption that this meeting is going to end in another 23 minutes or so, and then we're going to get up and do XYZ. Who knows? We might live that long. We don't know. We don't know. And what I find is there's two, at least, I think there's two really good reasons for introducing this element into your practice. The recognizing this assumption that I'm going to open my eyes and return to my so-called life at the end, right? That recognizing that we always, or usually, when we sink into the deep well of meditation, we're leaving a rope ladder there to climb out on, right? So recognizing the rope ladder and cutting the damn thing, just saying no, forget it. This is it. Now, it seems to me there's two benefits to that. One of which we can all attest to because we just experienced it, which is there's a more profound letting go. There really is something about holding on to that rope ladder, holding on to that assumption that we're going to go back, that when we realize that's just an assumption, it's just another thought, we let that go. Okay, that's it. This is it. We're dead. We're just going to go all the way, take a one-way ticket right now. There's a deeper, more profound letting go. The second benefit we can't attest to yet, but I would imagine that the second benefit is whenever the time comes when, in fact, we're dying, right? We've had some practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You always want to do the fire drill before the fire. Right? I mean, just imagine what people go through. And maybe some of you have seen this happen with loved ones who are going through their dying and some of them, many of them, I saw this with my mother. My mother didn't do a lot of meditation or spiritual insight or anything like that. But when she was dying of breast cancer back in 1993, there was this just intuitive connecting with the deep okayness of it. That it was okay to let go, and hopefully, that's what happens to people. I think there's something about being in that situation for a lot of people. Okay, just letting go, but not everyone. And what we want is to be able to be deeply familiar with not only the okayness of letting go into this place where there's not colors, not shapes, not boundaries, not time, not space, just boundless beingness, right? So that sinking into that space I just described, that's called meditating. It's also called dying. Right? So in a sense, every day when we do our fourth noble truth, every day we do our practice, we're practicing for life and we're also practicing for death. Mm-hmm. We're getting the habit, again, the neurological habit of just, that deep, in a way, Joanne, this is back to your question. In a way, the really deep letting go of the final layer is what happens when we really just completely let go of the body, the personality, and we don't open the eyes again. And the various traditions, generally they recognize that. They talk about that, and just what a wonderful opportunity the time of dying is. That this is the time of really recognizing, okay, I've been wearing this form. I've been wearing this suit of clothes that I call the Dean body and the Dean personality and the Dean, virtues and vices, all this stuff that makes up the individuality. I've been wearing it. I've been driving it like a vehicle, and it's gone as far as this vehicle is going to go. Now it's time to just get out and enjoy the open space. Yeah, Joanne?
It's so interesting to compare the experience of the depth, like when with it during meditation, when you spoke about cutting that ladder, like that, suppose we're not going to open our eyes again and we're just going to cut that ladder off. And immediately I went so much deeper into meditation. And to compare that experience of consciously knowing that I'm going to cut that ladder off to the idea of someone who knows that they're dying. And so that person doesn't have a ladder either. So the thought just came to me that perhaps if I continue to practice, perhaps if I am at that point where I'm consciously aware that I'm dying, perhaps it'll be just that much more peaceful, that I'll be able to just let go that much more deeper and more like of a welcoming letting go,
Yes.
That much less to fear. Like I just had that awareness when you were talking about that it's also like a practice of dying. It's like, wow, that sounds so wonderful.
Yes.
It sounds so wonderful to prepare in this way for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And isn't that a lovelier attitude to have about dying than the often the unrecognized, the unacknowledged fear that a lot of people, I suspect most people walk around with. I've known people that will not attend funerals because it freaks them out so much to be reminded that their time also is going to come.
That reminds me the Bible.
Say it again, Susie.
That reminds me the Bible.
Yeah.
What Bible said.
Right. Anything in particular that the Bible says?
Nothing particular, but it's that this is kind of
okay. Yeah. You know what? I actually love what you're doing here. And Potri, I'm going to get to you next. I actually love what you're doing here, which is you realize there's not a particular text that you have that you can quote, but there's some sense that you get that book is telling you, everything's fine. And what it made me think of just now was back when I was living in New Jersey. Couple of you know Jody, dear friend of ours. Actually, Peter, who is here with us, and Jody were the people that told me and my first wife, then Maggie, that we needed to start a meditation group there in New Jersey back in early 93, 94, something. And Jody, for a while, was doing some work with some people in a group house. And there was a guy, this sweet young guy with Down syndrome named Barry. Peter, you remember Barry? Yeah, I know you do because of the way you're smiling. Barry was so sweet. And he would come to our meditation sessions, and he actually didn't have speech. He couldn't talk. He couldn't read. But he could... and he always carried a Bible with him. And I forget exactly what happened. If I asked him, what he got from the Bible since he couldn't read, and he just held it and he kissed it. And I think he held it to his chest and he hugged it like this. I went, boy, that's great. He's just cut out all the middle part of the process, reading all those texts and figuring them out and sorting out the nice, happy teachings from all the horrible stuff where everyone is getting smited by the vengeful God and so forth. Boy, that's real spiritual wisdom. So, Barry. Okay, yes, Potri, please. You have to unmute. Still not hearing you. You have your headphones selected for your microphone?
Are you able to hear me now?
There you are. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. So the same during the practice, the same technique. I mean, or the instruction that you were saying about cutting the ladder. It was so beautiful to hear this dying. I just have a different experience which I want to share, which is of the living. And the reason is, in the physical world, there is so much in terms of thoughts like past and future and all of this. The beautiful thing that I realized when you say cut it is like, oh, everything is unknown. There is no past and there is no future. Everything is unknown. So when everything is unknown, everything appears as it needs to appear, and I'm not doing anything about it. So even the experience during the meditation was completely present in its purity. There was nothing in it, just because there is nothing that is known. When it is being cut, there is no mind. When it is cut, there is nothing that needs to be known. So there was a experience I want to share about that.
Right. Oh, thank you. No, that is so beautiful. Yeah, the nothing is known. Nothing is, and when you're using the word known, you're talking about the mind.
Yes.
Right. The mind, which is the function of thinking.
Yes.
Right. And we have this. As humans, this is a specialty of ours, is all this thinking, and it allows us to do things like, write books and build houses and so forth, which is great, but it's generally not an off switch to that. And so we're trying to generally, calculate the future and calculate the past and bring those into the present, and we're doing it on the level of thinking, and it has no reality to our actual experience. And then everything is getting like filtered through all that clutter and all that leaning forward to grasp this future thing, or leaning back to grasp this past thing, or our ideas about it. It's never the reality of it. It's just our ideas of it. So, yeah, that's such a good insight, that cutting of the ladder is not only coming into the simple, self-sufficient, A-OK presence in the context of dying, but in the context of living. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, and it's such a beautiful realization. So in a way, it's we don't know in terms of the mind. In terms of the deeper way of knowing, which is not mind, not thinking, but awareness, we do know. We are nothing but knowingness, not knowing anything in particular, right? Not knowing anything in particular, but just pure knowingness.
Right.
That when we let go of the thinking, when we cut the ladder, when we cut all our ladders, we're not going into some abyss. We're not going into some existential void. It's the. I mean, when we try to put this in language, it always sounds paradoxical, but it's the fullness of emptiness right? It's empty of phenomena. It's empty of characteristics. But what happens with so many people, I'm trying to write about Samuel Beckett right now and waiting for Godot and all this, where it's this idea of, oh, the nothingness is so horrible, the void is so horrible, it's so terrifying. But they're not looking at the true void because they're filling it up with all their ideas about, oh, it's so terrifying and so forth. They just let go of that. They go, oh yeah, it's, for lack of a better phrase, it's the fullness of emptiness. It's the luminous emptiness. It's the empty luminosity. It's, all the ways of describing it are inadequate. The experiencing of it is infinitely simple. And more, every moment that we spend sinking into that it comes more and more to pervade our life. And, thank God, we're so lucky. Good. So thank you for that, Potri. Okay. So if this particular bit of practice, you find it's powerful for you, introducing this insight into your meditation of, okay, let go of the assumption that we're going to open our eyes at the end of this, cut the rope ladder. If you find it's powerful for you, finds it's deepening of the meditation for you, then great, use that. You got one more thing in your toolkit there. Yes, Danae, please.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, as you were talking, sorry for my son, I had him here, he might get loud, but, that whole saying of living your best life, it just dawned on me that it refers to what you were talking about in the Four Truths. It's about recognizing to release suffering as opposed to the material things in life, because I think before I used to always think it means, everything that you have, enjoy everything that you have, in terms of physical things.
Right.
Or the people in your lives, I guess in a sense that could be physical as well.
Right. Right.
But now hearing you, I'm thinking it means something beyond that. Even, letting go of expectations and so forth. That's part of living your best life,
Yes. Yes.
So it just, I just had that thought.
And the beauty of this is it doesn't mean we can't have the physical objects. It doesn't mean we can't have the relationships with the people that we love. Every moment that we're hearing your child in the background there, that's a beautiful reminder for us. Okay, yeah, we have, I was just up with my grandbabies up in Northern California, and man, I'm not going to be a monk who, when you're a monk, in the Hindu tradition, the Buddhist tradition, you sever your ties. You don't have family. But the good news is we can. It's what my old teacher Maharishi used to call 200% of life. Right? We sink into finding the deep value, the real, as you say, the real living your best life, which is the inner, just the pure boundless awareness, the pure beingness, that fullness. And then we can come out and have the other. And what happens is more and more you find out that you're starting to learn how to enjoy being in the finite as if for the first time. To really enjoy, to really be with your child is to be present with your child, right? To really be with your child is to be not caught up in the thoughts, the expectations. Oh, I want him to be this. I want him to be that. Of course, there's certain things that we do. We provide guidance, but to be able to be completely in the moment with the child. I've got a grandbaby up north now who's 9 months old, and this is a teaching from the Bible. This is, to enter into the kingdom of heaven, be like a little child. So that little Griffin, my little 9-month-old, he's my guru now. He's totally in the moment, and he's totally just delighted to exist. He just smiles and he laughs. And it's not because he won the lottery. It's not because he just saw a great movie. It's because he's just enjoying being. And it's like just the pure, boundless delight of being. And I go, right, there's the kingdom of heaven. Just allow myself to be like that. So good. Okay, folks. So I think we've come to the conclusion that we're lucky ducks.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, the incredible fortune of meeting the Dharma. Unbelievable, unbelievable. How did we get this lucky? I don't know. We must have done something right. So when we feel that gratitude, always a thing to do is then give it back. Have the impulse of sharing it. So this is why, and all the traditions have, formulas for doing that. The particular formula that I like is this one from the Hindu tradition. So feel free to join in. May all beings be happy, and thus may peace prevail everywhere. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. See you around.
Such a gift you've given me. Thank you, all of you.
Well, the gift comes from the teachers.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted, Judy, to join you as a recipient of that gift.
Oh, yeah.
So
a marvel.
Yeah. So everyone, be like baby Griffin and enjoy being.